Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is a very long overdue training video number 13. This training video will detail the Xbox 360 thermal paste. Now then, what is thermal paste, you might ask? Thermal paste is that lovely stuff that goes between the processor and the heatsink. I'm holding in my hands right here the heatsink for the GPU and the SPU. It's a supplementary GPU, I don't really know. I just know that the chip that I've exposed here is the GPU. And this is the heatsink for it. This is in the fat Xbox 360s. Now if you have a generation 1, aka fat Xbox 360. And if you have a generation 2 or 3 Xbox 360, the slim or the super slim, you may or may not need to do this. I do not, as of the time of the recording of this video, have a Gen 2 or 3 360 to crack open and show this to you on. But I do have my own 360. It's my lovely Frankenstein 360 here. This is just the shell. As you can see, it's completely hollow. I just threw it together for instructional purposes. Anyhow, the thermal paste that Microsoft is important because it's this little stuff right here, and it goes between the processor and the heatsink, and it actually helps to aid in the transmission of heat from the processor to the heatsink, which it's essentially a liquid connection to it, but it's not an electroconductive liquid. So it's safe to have on there. Now, what we're going to be putting onto the processors today is this lovely stuff right here that I have called Arctic Alumina. Arctic Alumina, this is actually an old batch that I've had since the early 2000s, but it's still good. I actually put it on a 360 that I rebuilt, I think just this past weekend, or maybe a couple weeks ago, and I 12 volt fan modded that one along with putting the new thermal paste on there, and it worked wonders. I've 12 volt fan modded before without replacing thermal paste, and the systems would still get very, very hot. Having replaced the thermal paste and 12 volt fan modded it actually stays much cooler because those processors are actually venting that heat to the heatsink more easily, and then that heat is being picked up by the airflow and being dumped out the back of the system that much better. So, without further ado, I'm going to get right along with it. The reason why we need to replace the thermal paste on the Xbox 360s is because Microsoft manufactures these guys, were manufactured because the Xbox One is now out, just using this cheapo thermal tape. Now thermal tape, if you're in a hurry, it'll work. It'll do the job. But honestly, really, truly, if you actually care about what you're doing, use thermal paste. This is not the best thermal paste out there. This is honestly just a mid-range thermal paste. Much better one is going to be Arctic Silver, and I believe there's better ones out there than even Arctic Silver, but this is what I could afford at the time when I got it. So, and I've still got it because initially this plunger was all the way out here because this whole tube was filled, and I've built many a system with this. Now then, down to the processor. This, which you are looking at now, is the graphics processor. Where's my pointer? There it is. I believe this is the graphics processor, and then this chip here is the sound processor. I'm not entirely certain though. All I know is whatever this chip is here, it could be it's probably the VRAM for this guy here. But anyhow, we're going to be replacing the thermal paste on it. I didn't rehearse any of this. This is actually just being done raw because I had some extra time today, and I was going to do this as a project for myself, and I figured why not just go ahead and turn it into a YouTube video. Now then, to get these heat sinks off, because initially it was on here like so, To get these off, on the underside of the motherboard, you've got these X clamps. These are not the best way of attaching, but they work. If you are like me and you don't like to change too much about the system, there's a lot of videos out there that are going to say, yeah, you know, just get a Dremel and drill through these holes that would anchor it down, and then drill these out right here and then re-tap them and, you know, do a bunch of other stuff so that you can get in there and really get into the guts of it. I don't like doing that. I don't like doing that because there's too much opportunity for disaster. With that being said, on to removing the X-clamp. Now if you want a real opportunity for disaster, these guys right here are it. Because there are all these lovely tiny little bits and pieces just all over the board, just like that. And the opportunity to accidentally break one of those, it's pretty phenomenal, let me tell you what. Now then, to get these off, I like to use a nice little precision screwdriver, and then very, very carefully and gently get in here, and zoom in a bit more so you can see that better. See if that'll get into focus. Okay, there we go. So you're going to get right into here, and you have to be extremely gentle and careful with what you're doing, because you get right in there and then you just pry back gently but firmly, and the goal is to lift without touching the board. And there it is. Now as you can see, these posts right here have, let's see if I can get this into focus. Come on, focus. There it is. They have this little notch right there, that little groove. That little groove holds on that little portion right there of the X-clamp. This bit right here, this little undercurve, just bites right on there and then holds it in. And it can be very difficult to actually get that off without accidentally damaging something. I had a friend who decided to go ahead and do that on his own, and it was not a fun day because he ended up breaking it. Now, once you've actually got two of these off, you can actually kind of jiggle it from side to side, and that'll help you work it off of these last two. There we go. And then the last one will come right off. Now then, the next part of this is very careful. What you do is you grip the motherboard and you press down on these posts while lifting the motherboard up off of the heatsink. Now if it's particularly old thermal paste, it may end up acting like a glue. Oh wow, got lucky with that one. Okay, that's the first time I've done that on this board. Can you believe it? Let's go ahead and make a stand there out of the case, because I don't want to put this thing on plastic. Alright. Now then, as you look around on the board, you notice a couple of things on your chips. Let's see if we can get that in focus. I'm just going to turn this like so. You can probably hear my wife playing Minecraft in the background. She just fell into lava, and her pockets were probably filled with diamonds. Anyhow. Alright, so what you can do immediately after you get the heat sinks off is go ahead and take this excess thermal paste, or tape I should say, that's built up on the processors and melt it on there. And to do that, one of the things I like to use is a Q-tip. I've gone ahead and just cut the head off of this one, and I'm just using the non-cotton end of it as a scraper to gently scrape the rest of this junk off of here. And there's going to be a lot of gunk there. Some people are going to tell you to get a nice sharp razor blade. I don't like to do that because it gives you too much of an opportunity to just dig into that chip and then rip up the circuits and destroy them. Because some people get overzealous, and I like to try and make these videos with that in mind, so that I can hopefully, you know, prevent people from accidentally destroying their beloved game systems. I know that I would cry if I went in here to do this and ended up destroying something and then I'm out of the game system, because I don't really have a lot of money. So I like to keep what I have working for as long as possible using these little maintenance tricks. Now then, the other thing that you can use is a scraper. And this is actually, this particular little guy right here came out of an iPhone repair kit. And I literally just had it laying around, and I saw that in my toolbox, and I thought to myself, you know what? That little plastic edge there would be perfect for getting thermal paste off of processors. And I was right. So, we're going to go ahead and cut right here. And I'm going to get the rest of the thermal paste off these processors, and I'll be right back with that. And we're back. Alright. So, here are the heat sinks. At least the bottoms of them anyway. As you can see, I've gotten basically everything but a micro residue of the thermal paste off of them. Now with the heat sinks, I was able to go at it with soap, water, and a scrub sponge, because there's no electronic parts in these. This is just a block of aluminum. This is a block of aluminum and a little thing of copper. So, you know, go ahead and abuse them with water. What you don't want to do is do that with the motherboard. If you do that with the motherboard, and you've just killed it. So, what I did with the motherboard instead is use my little scraper and a couple of Q-tips and a little bit of rubbing alcohol here and there, and cleaned up the thermal paste off of the processors as good as I could get it. Just retouch that one just a little bit. Right. Now then, let's go ahead and take a look. Alright. As you can see, the processors still look just a little bit gunky, but not too badly. Because the goal isn't to get it perfectly clean, because let's face it, that's probably just not going to happen. The goal is to get it as clean as possible. So, once we've got that done, once we've got the bulk of the old thermal paste off of it, let's go ahead and retouch that real quick. It's okay if there's a little bit of the old stuff left on there, because it's not electroconductive. It's not going to short anything out, and it's not going to cause any problems in the future. So the next step is now applying the thermal paste. So we take the little cap off, and we only put it on the processors. We don't put it on the heatsink and the processor, just the processor. And we only do it one processor at a time. So we do it on here, put the heatsink on, attach the X clamp, and then here and here, heatsink, X clamp. So start that process. I'll go ahead and show you right quick. You do not need to use a large amount. You don't. Because the tiny amount you're going to put on there is going to spread out underneath the heatsink as you press the heatsink down to it. So we just very carefully squeeze a little bit on there, you go. That's more than enough. Set the thermal paste aside. As you can see, that's a very tiny dab. Very, very tiny. Now we take our heatsink, and I'm going to move the motherboard real quick off of the casing. Just going to hold it as I do this. And you go ahead and you align the pegs to the peg holes. Sit it right down on there. Hold it together as you flip it over carefully. And then rest it down right on top of that heatsink. Now then, we're still okay. It jostled around a little bit, but that's just going to spread the thermal paste around. And now we reattach the X clamp. And that's the hard part. Easy off, not so easy on. So, just go ahead and press down. It pops back up, laughing at us. And there it is. The X clamp is now firmly attached. And for the next one, flip it back over. And then we go zoom in so you can see it. Just move this. Alright. And we just apply a tiny dot here. And a tiny dot there. Just a little bit more. Alright, there we go. That's more than enough. And then reapply the heatsink in the exact orientation as it was earlier when you took it off. And for these, it was just like so. You flip it back over. And I gotta apologize to you right now, I just messed up. I should have done the this heatsink that we're doing right now. I should have done this one first and then the other one second. That's my fault. Now we got these X clamps put back on here. And this one's the tricky one, because if you're not careful, you can end up snapping the motherboard. As you can see, I'm having to have a little difficulty. You want to make sure that you don't put any pressure whatsoever on the motherboard itself, just on the heatsink and the X clamp to press them together. There we go. And there we go. And voila, X clamps are back on. And there it is. And then the next part of this is just to reassemble the rest of the system, and you're good to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and pause it real quick, and we're gonna go ahead and plug everything back in, and I'll see you over at the television to test it out and make sure that my baby's still working. If it's not, you're going to see a grown man cry, but that's okay, I've got a backup. Always have a backup. Alright, here we go. Okay, we're back for a fourth take because my camera's retarded. So, there's the Xbox that I was just working on. Cracked it open, replaced the thermal tape with thermal paste, and the fan on the back is lit up in green and spinning. That means it's got power. And we're going to make sure it actually works now. Turn on the TV here. Today's been a stressful day. And I'm going to turn it on. Fires up and works. Controller is synced. Output picture to the display works perfectly. See if the connection to Xbox Live works. Connection to Xbox Live is working. And it's still reading media straight from the disk, which is a good thing. Alright, so, before I get in trouble with somebody for thinking that I'm endorsing one game company over another, let's turn that off. Alright, so what have we learned? We've learned that Microsoft likes to cut corners. We've learned that they use thermal tape instead of thermal paste, and that if you come into possession of an older Xbox 360 like this one, or a Generation 2 or 3, it is a good idea to go ahead and crack it open, do a 12-volt fan mod on it, replace the thermal tape with thermal paste, throw it all back together, and voila, you will have a much longer living and much better working Xbox 360, because part of the problem of the heat is not just getting the red ring of death and other various memory damage issues, but it will also occasionally cause your game to freeze if it gets overheated too much. So, with that in mind, this has been USO Xbox 360 repair training video number 13. It's a mouthful and I need to change the name of my channel. Anyhow, I'm Robber01 and I'm out. Have a good one.